The hardened inmates of Yuma prison are sent to a desolate wilderness to build a railroad. It seems like an ordinary day of labor, but Provo among the prisoners is acting strangely today. As he hammers the rails, he watches every move of the guards, and deliberately snaps a rail spike.
On your feet, Provo. Move your ass.
Two armed guards are taken out with shocking ease. The long-suppressed convicts burst with excitement, smashing each other's shackles with wild strength. At this moment, Gant spots a guard's rifle in the distance, because with a gun, his words will finally carry weight. But his little scheme is immediately noticed by Provo.
It's a gun. All things like that, Gant.
Even so, Provo begins to draw resentment from the others. Though they have regained their freedom, everyone is hiding their own motives. Provo's loyal prison companion Menendez wants to deal with the loudmouth Roy, believing he will be trouble sooner or later, but Provo has plans of his own, because if they want to leave this wasteland alive, they still need Roy. No one knows this land better than him. To avoid slowing down the escape, Provo drives away the weak and useless inmates, leaving only 6 elite survivors, but everyone wants to be the leader.
Who's giving orders?
You dumb son of a bitch.
I put up with greasers, all kinds of shithead in my life. I never took no order from no breed.
You don't take orders.
If he were not useful, Provo would have gotten rid of him long ago. For now, he can only placate him and rely on him to lead everyone out of this place. And so their escape officially begins. Under Roy's guidance, the 7 men swim to a bridge where trains pass under the cover of night, then cling beneath it and wait for their chance. This is currently the fastest way out of the wilderness, but local officers are aware of this too. So guards are stationed heavily. As the train roars past, they board it in the most dangerous way, while easily slipping past the officers. They then race across the roof and enter a car, where the ice inside nearly breaks them. The 7 have climbed into a refrigerated car, and with the extreme day and night temperature shifts of the west, they are shaking uncontrollably from the cold. They quickly shove the ice blocks out, but the younger Shelby turns pale and nearly freezes on the train. Driven mad by hunger, Gant gnaws on raw pork to keep his energy up. After some discussion, they decide to jump off midway at a place called Gila Bend. There they can find the horses and supplies they need to survive. It is also far from busy towns and easier to evade law enforcement. News of the prison break soon reaches the ears of retired Marshal Burgade. It was he who personally sent Provo to prison, where he served 16 long years. Now that this group has escaped, they are bound to threaten everything within 100 miles. But the sheriff has already heard the news and impatiently remarks that such vicious convicts are never easy to catch. Between staying alive and chasing promotion, the sheriff sees things very clearly. His inaction sends Burgade into a rage. Seeing Burgade lose his temper, the sheriff hurriedly hands over the detailed files. 22 men escaped, 15 were captured and shot, leaving only 7 still on the run. Burgade studies the files of these 7 men, and aside from the 19-year-old Shelby, the rest are ruthless criminals. What enrages him most is that his lifelong nemesis Provo is still at large. After learning that they boarded a train, the sheriff has no choice but to lead his men to investigate. They stop the train, but no fugitives are found inside the cars. However, the observant Burgade discovers a trace of gun oil, and the ice is already gone. He deduces that the 7 men likely jumped off midway. The sheriff orders his deputies to immediately telegraph the towns along the route to spread the word, but searching town by town would be extremely difficult. Instead of taking the initiative, it is better to wait for them to take the bait. Burgade proposes using a town receiving a shipment of gold as bait to lure them in and then capture them. Before the sheriff can agree, he reveals the confidential plan to everyone present and even insists on publishing it in the newspaper. The sheriff hesitates, but at the moment he has no better idea. Meanwhile, Provo and the others hide at a relay station for several hours. Hunger, exhaustion, and pressure have pushed everyone to the brink of mental collapse. If no horses arrive on their own, they will have to split up and fend for themselves. At that moment, a rancher returns home driving a herd of horses, and he is alone. They immediately seize the rancher's horses, and now all they lack is cash. Before leaving, the unhinged Roy kills the rancher. Provo glares at him in fury. But ultimately he cuts the telephone line. The telegraph operator does not realize the relay station line is down until nightfall, but the sheriff claims it was probably caused by a lightning strike. In truth, he has no desire to risk his life and bring trouble upon himself. Burgade, however, is resolute, and as long as Provo is free, he cannot rest or eat in peace. In the end, the sheriff hands the task of capturing the fugitives to the retired lawman. On the way home, Burgade's steps are heavy. He tells his daughter Susan about the matter, but she strongly objects. Having already retired, he should enjoy his later years, so she firmly opposes her father taking such a risk. After all, Provo is no ordinary criminal. He is cunning and cruel, but she cannot stop her father. If Provo is allowed to roam free, how could he face the families of the victims who have died? At that moment, Susan's suitor Brickman appears, easing the tense atmosphere between father and daughter. Seeing that his daughter now has someone to protect her, Burgade becomes even more determined. He takes out his old trusted gear, looking at it again and again, wiping it carefully. Meanwhile, Provo and his men break into a general store and continue their crimes. The fugitives all change into new clothes and equip themselves with various weapons and supplies. Shelby, however, takes a handful of candy, while Gant develops a strong interest in the shopkeeper's daughter. Just as he is about to force himself on her, Provo steps in and orders him to let the woman go. Menendez, his second-in-command, also tells Gant to back off, since the woman is pregnant. Unexpectedly, Gant becomes violently agitated. After more than 10 years in prison, he has been holding it in for too long.
Gotta do with these greasers is teach them who's boss before they're born.
You tell me about it.
The woman seizes the chance to break free, and with only a knife in his hand, Gant is forced to back down when faced with a revolver. However, this show of authority does not restrain Gant. Instead, he resents Provo for interfering. Provo responds that there will be plenty of opportunities later. Roy then adds fuel to the fire, mocking that Mexican women should not be taken seriously. The discriminatory remark deeply angers we behind him, who stares at Roy with cold hostility. The others have long grown sick of this arrogant man as well, yet Provo treats him like a brother and trusts him deeply.
Listen, I want to thank you about bringing us here. We should talk about where we're going next.
Well, anything you need, you just ask old Leroy.
His death is deeply satisfying, but the others cannot help worrying about their own safety, and they also grow wary of Provo. Shelby picks up today's newspaper, and the news of the town receiving gold dominates the front page. Provo immediately sees through Burgade's scheme, yet he decides to play along and prepare an even bigger plan. Meanwhile, the town bank manager is extremely anxious, arguing with Burgade that using gold as bait is far too risky, but Burgade has already made up his mind, repeatedly assuring him that everything is foolproof. The train carrying the gold passes right before Provo and the others. Despite the heavy security, Provo gives a calm and confident smile. The gold arrives in town as scheduled, yet Burgade, who has set an airtight trap, sees no sign of Provo and his men. By the time he realizes something is wrong, it is already too late. What unfolds before his eyes hits him like a bolt from the blue, nearly driving him to collapse. Law enforcement lays out an elaborate trap, using gold as bait to capture the 7 escaped convicts. But unexpectedly, the fugitives show no interest in the gold and instead set their sights on the daughter of the retired Marshal Burgade.
Who are you? I don't even know you.
Oh, I know you, though. Long time.
The fugitive Provo storms into the house, planning to seize Susan as a hostage to confront his sworn enemy Burgade, the man who sent him to prison. He has long seen through Burgade's attempt to lure him. When Burgade realizes something is wrong and rushes home, his daughter is already gone. Frantic, he searches everywhere and finds the house in complete disarray. By chance, he discovers a note, and its message makes his hands tremble. Without delay, he rushes to the sheriff's office to seek help, but the sheriff shirks responsibility and refuses to act. The 7 escaped convicts are all vicious and dangerous, and capturing them would require military assistance, which would take several days to arrive. With no other choice, Burgade decides to rescue his daughter alone, walking straight into Provo's trap. What he does not expect is that the sheriff brings his deputies and decides to help him. After all, this is a kidnapping case within his jurisdiction. Susan's boyfriend Brickman also joins the group. However, Burgade strongly objects, because a newcomer facing hardened criminals is extremely dangerous, but Brickman's stubborn nature cannot be changed. Once the pursuit team is assembled, they head deep into the western frontier. During the chase, they notice something unsettling. Provo deliberately leaves traces everywhere, as if afraid they might lose him. Everyone begins to worry that it could be a trap, but with no way back now, the team can only press on. Sure enough, Provo deliberately waits for them ahead. He does not expect Burgade to take the bait so easily. As long as they leave Arizona and flee into the Indian reservation, even the army would be unable to touch them. At this moment, some members of the fugitive group raise objections, questioning why they should be dragged into Provo's personal vendetta. With no reward offered, they refuse to risk their lives for nothing. Seeing morale falter, Provo makes a promise. Before his imprisonment, he buried 2 bags of gold coins in different locations, and once recovered, each man would receive $4,000. With payment on the table, the group finally agrees to keep following him. They continue heading north until late into the night. Seeing Shelby fall asleep behind her, Susan seizes the moment when Gus lets his guard down, kicks Shelby off the horse, and rides away at full speed. Provo immediately gives chase, while Shelby runs after them on foot. But the pampered young woman lacks riding skill and falls hard to the ground. Susan gets up and keeps running, and Provo grabs her like a helpless chick, hauling her onto the horse and restraining her so tightly that she nearly loses her breath. Afterward, Provo brutally punishes Shelby. If they let her escape, their situation will only become more passive. Meanwhile, Burgade's team tracks the trail to a ranch. Provo's men took the rancher's horses and headed north with a girl. With this crucial lead, Burgade does not dare waste a second and rides north in pursuit. But in the end, he is still one step too late. Provo successfully reaches the Indian reservation, and to gain protection, he hands over all the gold coins he had hidden there. After finally catching a brief moment to breathe along the way, Gant once again loses control. While Provo is away, he tries to harm Susan. Shelby still has a shred of humanity, protecting the hostage at all times, and even clashes with Gant because of it. Unexpectedly, Shelby fires at a companion for Susan's sake, though it only grazes an ear. Watching from the side, Gus mocks him endlessly, and the furious Gant turns his anger on Gus instead. Before long, Burgade's group also arrives at the reservation. The sheriff explains the situation to the local tribal officers. However, they claim to know nothing and demand that no arrests be made on their land. Burgade leaves in anger. The sheriff regrets that he truly has no authority here, so he can only withdraw with the team. It seems Burgade overestimated the sheriff's resolve, as the man offers him no support at all. With no other option, Burgade decides to rescue his daughter alone. The loyal Brickman insists on going with him. Burgade cannot help but feel that his daughter chose the right man. As they search, Burgade teaches Brickman survival skills of the West, step by step. Soon they discover traces of Provo, likely only 2 or 3 miles ahead. But Burgade abandons the chase, since there are 6 fugitives, far more than he can handle. Instead, he lights a campfire nearby and sets a trap, waiting for someone to take the bait. After staging the scene, the two hide not far away. Night quietly falls, and everything around them becomes deadly silent. Brickman grows drowsy and asks Burgade in confusion whether this plan will really work. The moment he finishes speaking, movement stirs nearby. The campfire draws in the fugitive Weed, who passes right in front of them without noticing.
Weed.
Burgade hopes to extract more information, but Weed proves loyal and refuses to reveal their hideout. Seeing this, Burgade resorts to both pressure and persuasion, and to prevent escape, he has Brickman remove Weed's boots. At that moment, Weed pulls a dagger hidden in his sleeve, but Burgade reacts swiftly and subdues him. Still, extracting vital information from such a desperate outlaw is no easy task. The next day, Provo discovers that Weed is dead, thrown off a cliff. It is clear that Burgade must be nearby. Provo then loosens Susan's restraints, takes her to the mountainside, and forces her to wave downward. The purpose is to expose where Burgade is hiding. Menendez scans the area with binoculars. Susan resists fiercely, forcing Provo to act even more aggressively, causing her unbearable suffering. Soon, a flash from a mirror appears below, confirming that Burgade is hiding there. Provo becomes wildly excited upon discovering this. He then commits an even more unhinged act to provoke Burgade. He orders Gant and Gus to move in. They have long coveted Susan, and Provo intends to let them abuse her in front of Burgade. At that critical moment, Shelby steps forward again.
What do you want to cause her trouble for, huh? She never hurt you.
I don't want to hurt you, kid! Now move!
Provo instantly disarms Shelby and drives Susan downhill. Burgade watches in agony. At Provo's command, Gant and Gus rush to seize her. At this moment, Burgade can no longer wait. Even if it costs him his life, he must save his daughter, but his reckless action is stopped by Brickman. who knocks him unconscious. Gand and Gus capture Susan and continue their cruelty in the wilderness. Fortunately, Burgade is unconscious and does not witness it. When he wakes, his urgency to save his daughter remains unchanged. Provo is still unsatisfied and wants to hang Susan from a tree and let others continue harming her. Brickman keeps a close watch on everything, and under his persuasion, Burgade finally calms down. A direct confrontation would be a losing battle, so Burgade comes up with another plan. He empties the gunpowder from his bullets and gathers 2 full pouches. Provo waits an entire day without seeing Burgade attempt a rescue, while Gand and Gus indulge themselves. Susan is held halfway up the mountain, with Provo watching her closely nearby. The hatred between her and Burgade runs unimaginably deep, but without realizing it, Provo's death has begun its countdown. Using the gunpowder as fuel, Burgade ignites licorice root, and the flames surge toward the mountaintop. The group panics and retreats, but Provo alone searches desperately for Burgade. Through the raging fire, Burgade spots his daughter and tries to reach her, but Provo blocks the path ahead. In desperation, Burgade fires at distant shadows, forcing Provo's men to climb uphill. Gus, who harmed his daughter, is less fortunate, as Burgade shoots him down, leaving him to perish in the flames. At the mountaintop, Brickman also ignites licorice root, and trapped between 2 walls of fire, Provo's men panic. With no choice, they wrap themselves in blankets and charge through the flames, barely surviving. After the fire dies down, Gant returns to steal a horse and flee, only to be ambushed by Burgade and knocked down with a rifle butt. He is struck several more times, left disfigured and lifeless. At dawn, Burgade follows the tracks and continues the pursuit. Suddenly, a bullet flies toward him, but he narrowly avoids being hit. Provo immediately orders Menendez to flank from the side while he draws fire from the mountaintop. Seeing his sworn enemy right before him, Provo lowers his gun, no one knowing what crosses his mind. He then tells Shelby the location of the second stash of gold and hands Susan over to him. Shelby is stunned, with the last trace of conscience he has. Shelby takes Susan away from this land of bloodshed. Meanwhile, Menendez circles around, but Burgade has already heard him. He carries one gun in his hands and another at his waist. When Menendez approaches, Burgade strikes instantly, emptying his magazine in seconds. Seeing Burgade out of bullets, Menendez steps out confidently, but Burgade draws his second gun and kills him with a single shot. At that moment, Brickman arrives, and Burgade comes up with another plan, swapping clothes with Menendez to create a diversion. Just as Provo is about to fire, he senses something wrong and instantly understands everything. Burgade climbs the mountain from the side and unexpectedly runs into Shelby and his daughter. He fires without hesitation, sending Shelby fleeing in panic. Susan shouts for him to stop, and only then does Burgade lower his gun. Seeing his daughter battered and broken, the old father is heartbroken. Shelby flees to the mountaintop and runs straight into Brickman. Now only Provo remains. Before father and daughter can reunite, Provo emerges from the rocks and presses his gun to Burgade's head.
Drop it.
Burgade is hit twice, and Provo fires one more shot, sending him tumbling down. Unexpectedly, the fallen pistol becomes the key to a final reversal. The long-standing feud between the two men finally comes to an end. Burgade hits Provo in the heart, while surviving despite being shot 3 times. I am a film enthusiast. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.